This week in Seattle sports, we have news of trades, releases, and injuries. Welcome back to another episode of the Seattle Sports Show, where we love Seattle pro sports. I'm your host, Mikey. And there's been a lot of news going on this week. Once again, a busy week. We're here to talk about a few things across a few teams. So let's dive into it. We got trades, we got releases, we got injuries. Okay. The first thing we are going to mention here is the trade of Alex Wenberg from the Seattle Kraken to the New York Rangers. So, to me, looks like we are signaling that we are selling off here before the trade deadline and that the front office does not believe that this team is going to make the playoffs. Which is interesting because, again, where they're looking, this Kraken season feels so much like Mariners last season, where they are up and down and up and down. They're hovering around right there just when you feel like, and I have already felt like this multiple times throughout this Kraken season, that they are just going to have no shot. Then they start to go on a little streak to get themselves back in it. But because of where they've gotten to this point, just like the Mariners, because of where they got to the point when they got to the trade deadline, that front office didn't believe in them, so they made the moves that they made, selling off pieces. And now the Kraken, same thing, because of how this season has been inconsistent. Even though technically they're not, mathematically out of the playoffs yet, they're saying, hey, this has just not been a good enough season to trade for pieces now to try to get us into the playoffs. And in fact, let's sell some things off and try to build for the future, because trading Alex Wenberg to New York, what we received in return was a 2024 second round pick and a 2025 fourth round conditional pick. So that's what we get in return. We are also taking on 50% of Wenberg's contract. So that's how that played out, and we were able to get some pretty decent draft picks out of this situation. Okay, so the story of Wenberg, right? Signed him when the team became a team before the season started, and he, with his career here with the Kraken, he had 33 goals, 67 assists across 222 games. And yeah, I guess for them that just wasn't quite good enough. Production, given that he was on a, AAV contract of $4.5 million. If you're getting $4.5 million a year, they're expecting more than that. So another team can use them right now, though. So that's what they do. They trade them off. They get some draft capital in the future, and hopefully they can turn that into something. Again, very interesting because it's been so shaky on and off since the All-Star break. They're 7-4-1. They're only 6 points back of the wild card position right now. They have games against teams ahead of them in the next week, and then you never know. Something could happen. They could really make a push for the playoffs, but I just don't see it with this team, and especially Since it doesn't seem like they're going to go out and like get pieces to replace this. Um, you know, to replace the move that they made here. And then uh, we're talking about a situation where, to me, I would like to see prospects brought up so we can start seeing what they have and start getting them experience at this level. And unfortunately, that doesn't sound like that is going to be the case either. Ron Francis saying that they do not plan to bring up uh, Shane Wright. Yeah, in fact, his quote was "quote unquote." Nope, he is in a good spot right now, and so they're their number 4 pick from 2022 still going to sit down there, and that's kind of disappointing because we got about 20 games left, and Beniers, when he was drafted, they brought him up in a similar way. It was like the last 10 games of the season he got to play in, and he has said as much that kind of helped him get prepared for his full season the next year coming up. It sure would be great to get Shane Wright in here and see what you really see what you have at the NHL level if he can get it done. And if he can, compete at that level, and for the 20 games for him again, just that feeling of when you're stepping into the next season, like, hey, I've been here before, I've seen what this is like already, I already have those nerves shaked off because I've gone through, you know 10, 15, 20 of these games somewhere in there, so I already have those nerves shaked off, or shook off, so I can be ready to go. But they're making it sound like that is not going to be the idea this season. So I'm kind of questioning what that is with that. Okay, so there you go. There's the trade of Alex Winberg. We'll see if any more moves are made for the Kraken before the NHL trade deadline has passed, which is on March 8th, on Friday, by the way. So we'll see if there's any more last minute moves made before the trade deadline. Now, the other unfortunate piece of news that we have to mention here, I watched a a little interview press conference thing that Brian Schmetzer does. He always does it every week, with the media on the practice field, and of course, he was asked about Pedro de la Vega, what his availability is going to be for the next game and availability going forward. And unfortunately, Pedro de la Vega has suffered a hamstring injury, this time to the right side. So, when he was down there in Argentina before he came here, he suffered injury to the left. That's why they took it slow with him when he got here. And then he gets here, has a tweak. They take it easy with him before the season starts, and that's why he didn't hardly play in the first game, because they were still just like working on his conditioning and getting him ready to play in game. This second game, they get him in there, want him to play. They're hoping around 60 minutes. He plays about 60 minutes. In that 60th minute, that's when he suffered the injury, and we now know that it looking like hamstring again, and he's going to be gone for 6 to 8 weeks. And that, to me, is a big deal. A big deal, because I mean, the Sounders, again, they just really needed the beginning of this season to go right, to have all the the experimenting that Brian Schmetzer wanted to do with figuring out how this lineup was going to be and how they're going to fit together and who's going to have chemistry together, who's going to really be that leader up front, and who's going to be the one to call out the shots and calling out to the players and making sure that they're in the best position to be in. Now with so many injuries across the team, one of the pieces that you're expecting to be like a main piece for you this year is now going to be gone the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season. We're only 2 games in and we're already having players miss a month, 2 months, or more. This is not a good start to the season. Again, we were already wanting to use the beginning of this season for these players to get chemistry together and for them to figure out really what's going to the best lineup going forward for the rest of the season. And now that's delayed by 6 to 8 weeks. And really more than that, because it's going to take the 6 to 8 weeks for him to return. And then you probably, once you insert him back into the lineup, because he really has hardly played with the rest of the team, it's going to take, another 4 weeks for them to really figure out, okay, how does this all work and how does this all fit together? So, big bummer on that end for Pedro de la Vega and the Sounders. And then today we got more news. We got a release. Brian Monet was released from your Seattle Seahawks. This cleared $5.39 million in cap space. So I just recently talked about this. I can't remember if it was on, just a regular episode like this, or if it was on one of the mini mock drafts. But we talked about how Brian Monet would be another person that you could potentially cut to save a pretty big chunk in cap space. And we were just not sure how that was going to be because he had suffered injury in the past. So, he didn't play this last season. So it would be, being able to clear that cap space would be contingent on him passing a physical and not having to do any sort of injury settlement with him. Well, we didn't hear about it, but he must have passed a physical at some point because it's already been reported that the release is clearing up the full amount of cap space that you could clear with him, which was $5.39 million. So he must have passed a physical at some point, which makes me wonder, is he somebody, because when he did play, he played well for you? Is this another candidate like a Will Disley, Brian Monet now? Are they players who you cut them because they were on contracts that were far exceeding the amount of production they were giving you, or just haven't shown you that they can do it in recent history because of injury? Are these players, though, that you can bring back now at, depending on how free agency goes and how far along they get along? Can you go back to a Will Disley? Can you go back to a Brian Monet and say, hey, we really need to fill out our roster. We need depth. Do you want to come back for the minimum? And we'll take you back for a year, and you could try to, prove yourself here and to the rest of the league that you're good and ready to go for the next year. That type of thing. No, and a lot of times that players who are trying to get that 1 year prove a deal, if they are, if the team that they were on is a team that is willing to give that to them, that can be very beneficial to the player because that's already a system that they've been trained in and know. They know the staff and what they expect. So usually that's a scenario where you say, hey, I can take advantage of this. I know that, yes, this injury sent me back, but I can prove that I'm good to go, and now I'm gonna come back. For a case of Will Disley, hey, we had an offensive coordinator here that wasn't great. We had a tight end that was traded for, and you put ahead of me on the depth chart, but I'm still an important piece in blocking and a reliable receiver. can you bring him back on a 1 year minimum deal and have him go out and prove it? And you know, I would think those would be could potentially be something that those players would be interested, and that the Seahawks would be interested in doing, depending on how far along we get into free agency, and if we don't see them already like fill those positions with other players of higher caliber. All right. Well, that is your update for your Kraken, your Seahawks, and your Sounders, and some big news out of all of them. So let me know what you think of each of these. How did you feel about hearing about Alex Winberg being traded? How bummed were you when you heard about Pedro de la Vega's injury? And how excited are you for that cap space cleared by Brian Monet? Because I don't remember if I mentioned it now, but in total, the Seahawks now at that point, after that move, have $41.6 million in cap space. And again, I still don't think they're done making moves to clear cap space, before free agency starts. So let me know what you think of that. And, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit the like button, leave those comments. If you're listening on the podcast, please hit follow, hit subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review. That all helps out the show so much, and I greatly appreciate it. So thanks for listening to the Seattle Sports Show, where we watch legends awaken. So take cover, because with a sea of sound, you will see us rise to reign supreme and win forever.